My husband said divorce would ruin me. He forgot about the prenup. Hi, my name is Ashley Bennett. I'm 31 years old, and 8 months ago my husband sat across from me at our kitchen table, poured himself a glass of expensive scotch, and said the words he thought would break me forever. Divorce will ruin you, Ashley. You have nothing without me. You'll walk away with absolutely nothing. He smiled when he said it. Comfortable. Confident. Like a man who'd already won. What he forgot was that I'd had a lawyer long before I had a husband. What he forgot was the document sitting in my safe deposit box that I'd insisted on signing for years earlier, the one he'd laughed about at the time and called unnecessary. What he forgot was that I am my mother's daughter, and my mother always taught me to protect myself before anyone else got the chance to. He forgot about the prenup, and that single document didn't just save me. It destroyed him completely. This is the story of how the man I loved, the man I trusted with my entire life, tried to throw me away like I was nothing. And how I made sure he paid for every single lie, every hidden account, and every secret he thought I'd never find. I met Connor Walsh when I was 25 years old. He was 32, charming, well-dressed, and the kind of man who walked into a room and immediately owned it. He was a senior partner at a marketing firm in Denver, drove a black Mercedes, and had this smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the world. I was working as a financial analyst at a mid-sized investment firm. I was good at my job, disciplined with money, careful with decisions. My colleagues respected me. My boss trusted me with major accounts. I had my own apartment, my own savings, my own life. I was proud of what I'd built at 25. Connor swept me completely off my feet. Dinner at places I'd never been able to afford, weekend trips to New York and San Francisco, flowers delivered to my office on random Tuesday afternoons. He was attentive and passionate, and he told me I was brilliant, that he'd never met anyone like me. Looking back now, I can see the signs I completely missed. He always needed to be the smartest person in the room. He sulked when I got a promotion before he did at his own firm. He made little comments about my spending, my friends, my family, all wrapped in that charming smile, so they never quite registered as warnings. My best friend Diana said it plainly. Ashley, something feels off about him. You're just not used to seeing me happy, I told her. I cringe thinking about that now. We got engaged after 2 years of dating. My mother, Carol, pulled me aside the week after Connor proposed. She sat me down at her kitchen table with 2 cups of coffee and looked me straight in the eye. I like Connor, she said carefully, but I want you to consider a prenuptial agreement. Mom, that's so unromantic. Romance doesn't pay bills, she said firmly. You have assets. You have a career. You have a future that belongs to you. Protect it. I almost didn't listen. Connor certainly didn't want me to. When I brought it up, his face darkened immediately. Are you serious? He said, his voice tight. A prenup? That's basically saying you don't trust me. That you're already planning for this to fail. It's just protection, Connor. My mom suggested. Your mother has always had a problem with me, he snapped. I can't believe you're letting her poison this. We fought about it for 3 weeks. It was our first real fight, ugly and exhausting. But something my mother said stayed with me, some quiet, stubborn voice in the back of my head. I held firm. Eventually, Connor agreed, dismissively, telling his friends it was just a formality to keep my overprotective mother happy. He signed it without reading it carefully. I know that now because my attorney, Sandra Pierce, told me afterward that he'd spent less than 10 minutes reviewing a document that took us 3 weeks to draft. That was Connor's first mistake. It wasn't his last. We got married on a beautiful June afternoon. 200 guests, a venue in the Colorado mountains, everything perfect on the surface. I was genuinely happy that day. I want to be honest about that because it matters. I loved him. Whatever came after, I loved him on that day. The first year was good. The second year was complicated. By the third year, I could feel something shifting, something subtle and cold moving beneath the surface of our life together. Connor started working later. Not occasionally, constantly. He'd come home after 10, sometimes after midnight, smelling of expensive restaurants and someone else's perfume that I told myself was a client's or a colleague's. He started being dismissive of my opinions at dinner parties, talking over me, correcting me in front of friends with that patient condescending smile that made me feel stupid. "You're imagining things," he'd say when I brought it up. "You're too sensitive, Ashley. This is just what marriage looks like after a few years. You had unrealistic expectations." Gaslighting. I know the word now. Then I just thought I was failing at being a wife. The financial signs came next, and those I should have caught faster given my profession. Our joint account, which we used for household expenses, started running low more frequently. Connor managed our household finances because he'd insisted on it early in our marriage, saying he was better with numbers. Given that I was a financial analyst, this should have been a red flag the size of a billboard. But love makes you accept things logic never would. I started noticing small things. Receipts for restaurants I'd never been to. A hotel charge in our credit card statement for a weekend when Connor was supposedly at a conference. Withdrawals from our savings that Connor explained away as investment opportunities he'd tell me about later, but somehow never did. I didn't confront him yet. I started documenting instead. Old habits from my analytical work. Dates, amounts, discrepancies. A quiet spreadsheet on my personal laptop that grew more damning every week. Then came the moment everything cracked open. It was a Thursday evening in October. I came home early from work with a migraine, let myself in quietly, and found Connor in his home office on the phone. He hadn't heard me come in. I stood in the hallway and heard him say, in a voice I'd never heard him use before, warm and intimate, and completely unlike how he spoke to me. "She has no idea, I promise. Just be patient a little longer. I'm handling it. Once I file, she'll get nothing. She doesn't understand how any of this works." He laughed softly at something the other person said. My blood ran cold. I backed out of the hallway silently, sat in my car in the driveway for 40 minutes, and made two decisions. First, I was not going to let him see that I knew. Second, I was going to find out exactly what he was planning before he got the chance to execute it. The next morning, I called Sandra Pierce, the attorney who drafted our prenup. I hadn't spoken to her in 4 years. "Sandra," I said, "I need to know exactly what our prenuptial agreement protects." She walked me through it carefully. Everything I'd brought into the marriage, my savings, my investment portfolio, my 401k, all protected. Any inheritance I received during the marriage, protected. My career earnings deposited into my personal account, protected. Crucially, Sandra had also included a clause I'd forgotten about, one she'd insisted on, and Connor had barely glanced at, a financial misconduct clause. If either party could demonstrate deliberate financial deception during the marriage, the deceiving party forfeited their claim to any shared marital assets. "Sandra," I said slowly, "what counts as financial deception?" "Hidden accounts," she said. "Undisclosed investments. Transferring marital assets to third parties without spousal knowledge or consent." I felt something settle in my chest. Quiet and cold and certain. "I need to hire a forensic accountant," I said. "I know someone excellent," Sandra replied. "Her name is Rebecca Torres. She's the best in Denver." I hired Rebecca that same week. I gave her access to every financial document I'd quietly gathered over the past months: bank statements, credit card records, tax returns. Connor had always filed our taxes jointly, and I'd always signed where he pointed without examining the returns carefully. That was my biggest regret, because Rebecca found things in those returns that made even her professional composure slip. Connor had a business account I knew nothing about. He'd been running money through a consulting LLC he'd registered in a state neither of us lived in, depositing client payments that should have been disclosed as marital income. He had a savings account in his name only, funded by transfers from our joint account labeled as business expenses. He'd invested in 3 real estate properties without telling me, properties purchased with money from our joint savings. And there was a woman. Rebecca found evidence of significant financial transfers to an account belonging to someone named Lauren Simmons. Dinners, hotels, jewelry, a weekend trip to Cancun that coincided exactly with a client retreat Connor had attended the previous spring. Rebecca put the complete report on my desk on a Wednesday afternoon. The total amount Connor had hidden or misappropriated from our marital finances was just over $420,000. I sat with that number for a long time. Then I forwarded everything to Sandra. 3 days later, Connor came home and told me he wanted a divorce.
He was calm about it.
Almost rehearsed. He sat across from me at our kitchen table with his glass of scotch and explained that he'd been unhappy for a while, that we'd grown apart, that this was the mature, adult decision. Then he said it. The line he'd clearly been saving.
Divorce will ruin you, Ashley.
You have nothing without me. You'll walk away with absolutely nothing. He leaned back in his chair, completely at ease, like he was delivering a business presentation to someone with no leverage and no options. I looked at him for a long moment, the man I'd loved, the man who'd smiled at our wedding, the man who'd been stealing from me and lying to my face for years while I cooked dinners and planned vacations and wondered what I was doing wrong. Okay, I said quietly. He blinked. He'd expected tears. He'd expected panic. He'd expected me to beg. Okay, he repeated. My attorney will be in touch, I said, standing up. You should probably find somewhere else to sleep tonight. He actually laughed. You don't have an attorney, Ashley. Sandra Pierce, I said. She says hello. The laugh died on his face. The divorce proceedings began 2 weeks later. Connor arrived at the first meeting with his attorney, a sharp, aggressive man named Philip Garrett, who clearly had been told this would be a straightforward process. They had a strategy. They were going to argue that the prenup was invalid, that it had been signed under duress, that I'd pressured Connor into it. Sandra let them finish their opening argument. Then she opened her briefcase and placed Rebecca Torres's forensic accounting report on the table. Philip Garrett picked it up. His expression changed as he read. I watched Connor watching his attorney's face, and I watched the exact moment Connor realized what was in that report. $420,000, Sandra said pleasantly. Hidden, misappropriated, and transferred in direct violation of the financial misconduct clause in the prenuptial agreement, which, by the way, was signed voluntarily by both parties and witnessed by 2 attorneys. The duress argument won't hold. Connor's face had gone the color of old paper. Furthermore, Sandra continued, my client will be pursuing the full value of those misappropriated funds, plus interest plus legal fees, per the terms of the agreement. Philip leaned over and whispered something urgently to Connor. Connor shook his head, whispered back. They went back and forth for nearly a minute while Sandra and I sat quietly. Finally, Philip straightened. My client would like to discuss settlement options. Connor looked at me across the table. For the first time in years, maybe for the first time ever, he looked at me like he was actually seeing me. Ashley, he said, and his voice was different now. Smaller. Can we talk? Just us. No, I said simply. Everything goes through Sandra. He flinched, and I felt nothing except a clean, clear sense of resolution. The settlement was finalized 6 weeks later. Connor paid back every dollar of the misappropriated funds. I kept my personal assets, my investment portfolio, my career savings. The marital home was sold, and I received 60% of the proceeds per the misconduct clause. Connor's Consulting LLC was dissolved as part of the settlement. His affair with Lauren Simmons became part of the court record, which meant his firm's ethics board was notified, since he'd used company-client relationships to obscure the LLC's income. He lost his senior partner position 2 months after the divorce was finalized. Diana came over the night the settlement was signed. We sat on my new apartment balcony with a bottle of good wine, and she said, I told you something was off about him. You did, I admitted. You absolutely did. Are you okay? She asked. I thought about it honestly. I'm getting there, I said. Ask me again in 6 months. 6 months later, I'm genuinely okay. Better than okay. I took a position at a larger investment firm, a significant step up from where I was when I met Connor. I moved into a beautiful apartment in a neighborhood I love. I've been spending weekends with Diana and with my mother, who never once said I told you so, which is the kindest thing she's ever done for me. I still think about the woman I was at that kitchen table when Connor told me I had nothing. I want to find her and tell her, you have everything. You have your mind, your work, your integrity, and a document in a safe deposit box that your mother told you to get and your gut told you to keep. You have more than he will ever understand. The prenup didn't just protect my money. It protected my future.
My mother saw that before I did.
Sandra built it, and Connor's own greed triggered it. If you are in a relationship and someone is making you feel small, making you question your own perception, telling you that you need them to survive, please hear me. Document everything.
Trust your instincts.
And find yourself a good attorney before you ever need one. Because the best revenge isn't anger. It isn't drama. It isn't even confrontation. It's sitting across a table from the man who thought he destroyed you, watching his certainty collapse in real time, and saying two quiet words that change everything. Okay then. My name is Ashley Bennett. I'm 31 years old. I'm a senior financial analyst, a homeowner, and a woman who knows exactly what she's worth. And my ex-husband is currently updating his resume.